and give an open source way to add integrations.
We want our integrations to be really robust and really high quality. I think kind of a controversial take, but I think that's the worst of all possible worlds, where you end up doing a ton of work to implement them, and then you don't control your destiny if something in the integration doesn't work perfectly. And for us, integrations are so core to our business that like we just can't let that be in the hands of a third party. We need to own the experience. We've been building from the back of the funnel to the front of the funnel. This is kind of based on my experience from my first company. So in my first company, Timeful, we were featured in the App Store on our launch week. We got like 300,000 downloads the first weekend and retained none of them. So I was pretty scarred by that experience. And so I decided that for the next company, I would rather have 10 rock solid retained customers that find a ton of value in the product, and then figure out how to activate more into it, and then figure out how to bring more in top of funnel. And so that's the progress stage. I mean, our YouTube channel is going to cross 10,000 views for the first time this month. So like an order of magnitude fewer, but super high intent. And those convert really, really well. Like 25% of our paying customers come from YouTube, because like, if you're going to sit through a 45-minute tutorial of me building an AI agent, like you're high intent. You really want to use this product.
All strategies don't work for all products. So there's always a product and the strategy fit and the channel fit. I think for you, because it's a horizontal product and because it enables so many customers, it's also a very demoable product and very outcome-oriented product, where you can start with the outcome itself, and the outcome can be very... My guest today is Jacob Bank. Jacob is the founder and CEO of Relay. Relay is a startup that is building AI agents that will work for you. He previously built products at Google in consumer shopping, G Suite, and other areas. He was also the founder of Timeful, a new type of calendar that was acquired and integrated into Gmail and Google Calendar. In this conversation, we'll cover, what are the different types of agents Relay is building and how it's solving different customer problems. How are agents evolving? What is the potential of AI agents? And what are the challenges in creating a product in such a fast-moving space and being an AI-first product? If this is first time listening to your startup project, don't forget to subscribe to us whenever you listen to the podcast. It will help us reach more audience. Jacob Bank, welcome to Startup Project Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
So let's get right into it. What is Relay and how did it get started?
Relay.app is a platform to build AI agents, and the journey has been a bit winding to get here. I started the company in 2021. My background, by the way, is in academic research in AI and then building productivity tools. And so when I started the company in 2021, we had two founding premises. The first founding premise was that we all use a lot of tools to get our work done, and that the builders of those individual tools spend a lot of time figuring out how to make experiences within those tools better, but probably not enough time figuring out how those tools interact with the others in your ecosystem. For example, I used to be the product lead for Gmail, and we would agonize about every single pixel when you were archiving an email or replying to an email or starring an email. But then if you said, hey, I really need to get data out of Gmail into Notion and then also Salesforce and then send a Slack message, we say, hey, sorry, good luck, use the API. And when we looked at the knowledge work people are actually doing, a lot of what we do as people is like take stuff from one tool, do some stuff to it, and then stick it in another tool. So we thought there was an opportunity where people were underestimating the importance of cross-tool coordination. And then second, it sounds so silly to say this now, but it was not obvious in the summer of 2021 that AI is going to be important in doing this. And so actually,
what was the original thesis when AI was like not highly important?
So the original name, this was before ChatGPT. So this was before it was sort of known that LLMs were going to have like the breadth of use cases and the quality that they did. I mean, the kind of work I had done on Gmail was with some precursors to modern systems. Like we built this feature where it automatically auto-completes as you type your email. And that used a variety of like, kind of precursor models, LSTMs and things that didn't use exactly the same technology as what modern models use, but it was kind of directionally on the right track, but like dramatically less capable than what we have now. But even, my background once upon a time was in just like traditional machine learning feature engineering and classification using support vector machines, and I thought even using that technology, like you could do some useful stuff. So the original name of the company was Collab AI, and we didn't know exactly what product we wanted to build, just that it was going to help with cross-product workflows and that it was going to use AI somehow to do that. And so for the first year of the company, really first year and a half of the company, we wandered in the desert, as they say. We built 8 or 9 different product prototypes that all kind of fit that theme, but none were quite right. We built an automated to-do list that aggregated things you had to take action on across your tools. We built a contextual knowledge base that would tell you when content was up to date or who was the right person in your company to talk to. We built a stand-up tool. We built an employee onboarding tool. And then eventually by the end of this, where we landed was a workflow tool. And a workflow tool that captured repeated tasks that had an element that can be automated and an element that required human judgment. So that's why we named the company Relay, because we were thinking, so many things that we do should be a relay race where the computer does some stuff and the user does some stuff. And so that's when we named the company Relay and announced our beta. This was at the end of 2022. We ran our beta in 2023, where we were a workflow product that was AI powered that sort of sat halfway between a Zapier style automation product and an Asana style collaborative task management experience. And by the end of the beta, we realized that maybe there was a category to be created there, but it wasn't us who was going to create it. It just wasn't right. And I'm sure many of your guests have mentioned this, like, when you're an entrepreneur and you're just like muscling something through that's fundamentally not right. There's too much friction in the conversations. You can't explain what you're doing easily enough. And so in the summer of 2023, we decided we're going to build an automation tool. And that we're going to focus on, you could call it like the market that Zapier is the leader in, which is cross-product horizontal workflow automation for a non-technical audience. But we were going to try to build the modern version of it. And so what makes it modern? It's way easier to use for non-technical people. It has AI better integrated into the workflows that you create, and it has human-in-the-loop capability so that you can correct your AI when it gets stuff wrong. And so in 2024, we were an AI-powered automation product. And we kind of positioned ourselves as the modern alternative to Zapier. We got to initial traction and then early product market fit. But what we realized was that by positioning ourselves as an automation product, there were 2 major limitations that came from that. One, when you describe yourself as a no-code workflow automation tool, you really limit the audience of people that think you're the tool for them. Like, there's a subset of the world, 10 million people or so, who are comfortable working on these no-code automation tools. But we wanted to tackle the much bigger opportunity of helping every business get more work done with AI. So we wanted to broaden our positioning to capture that opportunity. And then second, we really didn't want to be perceived as a duct tape product that only exists to like temporarily glue 2 products together because they happen to not have a native integration. We want to be like a transformative tool that materially augments the work that your team can do. So the evolution that we're making now, and we can talk about whether the technical language actually matters or not. I don't think it does, but we're basically transitioning from an AI automation platform for no-code workflow builders into an AI agent building platform for everyone. And we can talk more about what that means and why I think it's cool.
So I think everyone at this point, at least, slightly people who use startups, early stage company products, or, no code has been this word that has been flowing around for the last 5 years. Everyone is sort of familiar with the no code, low code idea. Zapier is pretty popular. And I had this thesis that, a next version of Zapier is bound to be because of AI, because it's sort of like if you imagine a line with, 10 dashes, and the gaps were much longer before AI. Now it's like you have one single line with a small dot where the dot represents the human in the loop. So that's sort of like the way I describe from Zapier to the next version of Zapier. Um, the question really though, like you mentioned the duct tape product you don't want to be, and when I see a product similar to yours is the problem is we are using so many tools and so much data is spread across different things. So many workflows require more than 5 tools to get it done. Um, so how are you prioritizing which tools to bring into the platform?
Right now, we have about 120 native integrations. The way we think about it is that there's about 12 categories of tools that pretty much every business needs. Every business has an email client, Gmail or Outlook. Every business has a calendar client and then maybe also a scheduling tool on top of it. Every business has a messaging tool of some sort, Slack, Discord, WhatsApp, other. Every business has a CRM of some sort, whether that's a dedicated CRM like Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, Adio, or you've built your own CRM in Notion or Airtable or Google Sheets. Everyone has an email marketing tool. Everyone has an email e-signature tool. So there's these 12 to 15 categories that are quite ubiquitous, and then in each category there are 3 to 20 like players that have material market share. Some markets are more consolidated than others. I mean, for example, if you look at email marketing between Loops and Drip and Mailchimp and Kit, like there's probably dozens that have pretty material usage. Um, and so we've basically just tried to kind of work our way down that list for our target audience, which is it skews towards smaller and medium-sized businesses. Our largest customer has like 1,000 employees, so we haven't done the NetSuite or the ADP or the ServiceNow, like the large enterprise products. But if you're a regular, smaller, medium-sized business using modern tools, you'll probably find everything you need with Relay. So we have 100 some. Zapier has 7,000. I don't think you need 7,000. I think that's a vanity metric. I bet half of those don't even really work, but they definitely have more than we do. And so I think the number that we need to get to is probably somewhere between 3 and 500 for the product to really feel complete for everyone in our target audience. And that is a long slog, but I have a couple beliefs that I think are different from other people in the startup ecosystem. One is I believe integrations are skilled labor. Like, I do not think this is something that you can just outsource to a low quality engineer. If you're going to build a really good Salesforce integration with thousands of custom fields and thousands of custom properties and build a performant autocomplete on top of that and know how to navigate the object hierarchy, that's some really hard software engineering, and you need really good software engineers to do it. And the second is that I believe agents will only be as useful as the robustness of their ability to interact with the tools that you use. So there's kind of like two big schools of thought. One school of thought is like, let's just do everything in the browser. Like, OpenAI operator or Claude computers. I'll just be like the humanoid robot equivalent
It's
of an
almost an
AI
evolution
agent.
of like the UI testing,
Yeah,
Selenium-based
exactly.
UI
It's like
testing.
on one hand, but I don't. You could think of it as like UiPath meets the modern age, but like UiPath to me means a lot of like very carefully scripted rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's like we're just going to use the browser, and then we're going to build on top of APIs. Those are the two big schools of thought. I think every serious player in the agent space is going to need to do both at some point, because there will always be some products that don't have APIs. But if there is an API available, like almost certainly that is going to be a way more efficient and way robust way for the AI to interact with the product in the near term. So we have focused entirely on robust API based integrations, because for our target audience and the kind of tools we integrate with, those exist.
Um, in terms of traction, what has the traction been like? How many customers are using it? Like, give us a little bit of insight in terms of like the scale of the company right now.
Yeah, so we're now at 440 paying customers. We have about 1,200 weekly active teams. Um, uh, that's up from essentially zero when we launched at the very end of 2023. That's been our first year. I would call that, everyone has a different definition of product market fit. I'd call it early product market fit. I think, we kind of in the last 6 months have gone from initial traction to early product market fit. My personal definition of product market fit is like, could I go on for a product led self serve business? Like, could I go on vacation for a week and come back with more users, more customers, and more revenue. And that is now true of our business. We still, we still of course want to bend the curve and grow faster. But I think we've with 440 paying customers, there's enough there to say that you're not just like a bespoke consulting shop for one or two companies.
So, what are you doing to sort of drive this adoption further? And I think you've done very well in terms of like product-led content growth, especially on LinkedIn. Once I discovered your product and started, following you on LinkedIn, I've really seen that, you really took to yourself on selling the use cases, what the product can do. Talk to me a little bit about that. Is that the strategy?
Yeah.
How
That's
intentional? How are you
super
thinking about
recent,
it?
by the way. We only kind of figured that out in the past month. So we've been building from the back of the funnel to the front of the funnel. This is kind of based on my experience from my first company. In my first
What do you
company,
mean by that?
yeah, meaning we started with retention and depth of engagement, then moved to activation, and now have moved to working on top of funnel. So in my first company, Timeful, we were featured in the App Store on our launch week. We got like 300,000 downloads the first weekend and retained none of them. And so I was pretty scarred by that experience. And so I decided that for the next company, I would rather have 10 rock solid retained customers that find a ton of value in the product and then figure out how to activate more into it and then figure out how to bring more in top of funnel. And so that's the progression we've taken where already 6 months ago, I felt pretty good that once someone was activated, they were going to retain really healthily for the long term, engage, and broaden their use cases. We then spent a ton of time working on activation so that people could understand what their first use case should be and get their first workflow up and running successfully. We have a lot more work to do there, by the way. And only now in the last 2 months have we put a disciplined effort into top of funnel. And the strategy that I think makes sense for our kind of product, fundamentally, it has to be word of mouth, facilitated. Word of mouth isn't just like you sit back and you wait for people to hope that they talked about it with the other. Word of mouth facilitated by content, community, and partnerships. If I had to pick one company that we look up to as a role model, it's Notion in that regard, where they built a very flexible horizontal tool that gained a lot of. It took time, took a long time, but eventually gained a lot of true fans and then had this whole ecosystem of community members and templates and partners. And so for us, it's sort of the same. So first, there's content that I create. And I spend a lot of my time on content creation, and there are two types of content that I create. One is I make LinkedIn posts, which are designed to be sort of teasers that illuminate a use case that you could use an AI agent for. And so I write a lot of posts of the form that's like, I just built a cool AI agent to synthesize all of the insights from my customer calls from the last week. Here's how it works. It looks at all of your Fireflies recording from the last week. It takes, it parses key information out of the summaries of each of them. It puts it into Claude 3.5 Sonnet to write an aggregated summary, and then it sends it out to our team over Slack. Make a 6-second GIF about it, and then say, let me know if you're interested in trying it. And then I pair that with long form YouTube tutorials that show you how to actually build the thing. And so on LinkedIn, I now have 15,000 followers, but a month ago I only had 7,000. So this is brand new. And now I'm getting 150,000 or so impressions a month on LinkedIn. So pretty decent top of funnel for our stage. Obviously, most of those people on LinkedIn aren't like looking to adopt or buy a tool right now. It's more about sort of like building this brand gravity, as they call it, where people become more aware of you over time. And then our YouTube channel is going to cross 10,000 views for the first time this month. So like an order of magnitude fewer, but super high intent. And those convert really, really well. Like 25% of our paying customers come from YouTube because like if you're going to sit through a 45-minute tutorial of me building an AI agent, like you're high intent. You really want to use this product. So that's the content I create. But now that we have a pretty robust community and set of partners and set of happy customers, many of them are writing LinkedIn posts about AI agents they built because they want to show off that they're using AI in their work too. They might build templates in our gallery. They might record their own YouTube videos. And so this is how we're starting to build, because with a horizontal product, it's always tough for people to figure out like, what do I use this thing for? And the way we're trying to solve that is by having a really robust gallery of concrete use cases that are broadly resonant that you can start with today, whether those are provided by me or whether they're provided by one of our partners who has an audience in a specific function or a specific industry. So, for example, we have a couple of real estate agents who love our product, and they've started creating content about how other real estate agents can use AI agents effectively to monitor new listings or interact with their clients. And so I don't know anything about real estate, but I can build a platform that enables the real estate agent to build their own agent and then share it with their audience.
I mean, all strategies don't work for all products. So there's always a product and the strategy fit and the channel fit. I think for you, because it's a horizontal product, and because it enables so many customers, it's also a very demoable product and very outcome oriented product where you can start with the outcome itself, and the outcome can be very attractive because it saves time. And LinkedIn is sort of like always about, what is a growth hack that you can give me? What can I do? Something in
It,
one
it's
minute.
it's a really good fit for LinkedIn. That's what we found. And for example, like I've had no traction on Twitter, zero. Like
Zero. Yeah.
I tweet similar things and it gets like 50 views,
Yeah.
and then it gets like 500,000 impressions on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I think the LinkedIn plus YouTube strategy is clearly a winning strategy for you. And as the product gets more, and if you add, I almost feel like affiliation could be another way to
Exactly.
actually.
So we just launched our affiliate program, and we just launched a template gallery that other people can submit templates to.
Yeah.
And so that's where we want to kind of capture these other content creators who have their own audience that they want to use us as a tool to help, make their business better.
How come there's no LinkedIn integration when you post so much on LinkedIn?
Ah, we're actually in the review process from LinkedIn right now. We're waiting for them to flip the bit to accept us, but it's coming very soon.
Got it. Because you have Blue Sky, which is, very, very, recently, more
Yeah,
adopted product.
it's funny because there are a few dimensions that make integrations easier or harder to build. There's the quality of the API documentation. There's whether there's a formal review process that you need to go through and how rigorous that review process is. There's how many different capabilities you need to support. And so we've been we're constantly surprised by which integrations are easy and which integrations are hard. It has been counterintuitive to me.
What integrations are coming in the next couple of months?
So we have a public roadmap of integrations. It's listed. We use a feature request board tool called Nolt. LinkedIn is at the top there. A few others that are coming. WhatsApp is coming. That's a really highly requested one. Xero, the accounting provider, is a really highly requested one. We have a few more social media integrations to build, deepening our YouTube integration, building an Instagram integration, because for a lot of content marketers, those are important. We need to deepen our integrations with website builders and blog providers. Like we don't have Squarespace or Wix.
WordPress.
Yeah, we don't have WordPress. We just have Webflow at the moment. We don't have Sanity, even though that's the tool we use. So we always have the escape hatch, where if you're a little bit more technical, you can use a tool called custom HTTP requests or webhooks to directly integrate. So we do all our own publishing on our Sanity instance via Relay, but we use webhooks to do it, which is we don't want that to be the experience the majority of our users have to go through, because you do have to be a bit technical to set that up. And so the drumbeat of integrations will go on forever, but we really want to cluster around the use case where we're seeing the most traction, which is content creation and marketing, research use cases, especially in the context of sales, and then general like back office operations for the most common providers of those tools.
It's amazing that in spite of you talk to a typical business or like a typical software company, we have like hundreds of SaaS tools that a company has to use. And still, a company like Relay is needed for them to complete tasks. Like it's
Well, it's even as I would argue that as the number of tools goes up, you need it more. Because yeah, if you're just using everything within the HubSpot ecosystem, for example, most of those tools have decent native integrations with each other.
yeah.
But the more you're choosing, best of breed individual tools in each category, like a typical provider will build the integrations with like the top three partner products in the top three categories they need to integrate with, but that still leaves like a huge ocean of integrations that they don't have. So like SaaS sprawl is kind of good for tools for tools in our category. And this is one of the reasons why it took so long for us to get off the ground, why we needed to build so much. This is why there aren't as many companies in this market as I would expect there to be, given how big of an opportunity it is, because like it's just a lot of work to build all these integrations. Like even when we had 50 integrations, I didn't really consider our product viable because for a given business that's considering adopting you need to at least be comprehensive for their tool. So we'd go into these calls and be like, do you have Gmail? Yes. Do you have Slack? Yes. Do you have Google Docs? Yes. Do you have MailChimp? Yes. Do you have DocuSign? Womp womp. Like, and then be like, oh, I guess I'll just stick with Zapier. And so we had to hit a critical mass for enough businesses to really be viable. And now, so for a good chunk of the last year, integrations was our absolute top priority. Now it's still an important ongoing priority, but I no longer feel like it's the biggest blocker to our company succeeding.
Why not go through the approach of, because some companies, especially in the enterprise space and more like soft, deeper, platform or IaaS layer do this, is where you have a lot of integrations. They open source or like give an open source way to add integrations. Have you thought about that? What are the pros and cons of doing that?
There's a couple ways that we've seen people do that. There are some that have like open source integrations that can be provided back into the main product, like Active Pieces is a company that allows that. And there are other companies where they allow developers to build their own kind of like packs or extensions, like Make.com allows that. And there are others that allow third-party developers to build their own integrations, like Zapier. All reasonable approaches all have pros and cons. Our philosophy has always been we want our integrations to be really robust and really high quality. Like if an integration exists in Relay, it works. And what we found is that the broader the aperture a company creates in who can publish which kinds of integrations, the more flakiness and unreliability that you have. We will probably need to at some point open up a platform and allow additional developers, but I don't know that that's the right approach in this day and age. I think the right approach in this day and age is to have amazing software engineers design the platform and the framework, and then use AI coding tools to augment themselves to build tons of integrations.
Use AI internally to improve your capability versus externally
Yes.
outsourcing.
Yes.
I like that.
I think that's going to be a better approach. There's also the approach of people who don't want to build integrations themselves can use one of these iPaaS providers, whether it's Paragon or Tray or Prismatic. I think kind of a controversial take, but I think that's the worst of all possible worlds, where you end up doing a ton of work to implement them, and then you don't control your destiny if something in the integration doesn't work perfectly. And for us, integrations are so core to our business that like we just can't let that be in the hands of a third party. We need
I mean,
to we need to own the experience.
I mean, there is some overlap here in terms. There's a lot of overlap with Make.com, Zapier, and these are now legit businesses of significant size. Do you see them as competition? And in that case, like, how are you differentiating from them?
We see when people are deciding between Relay and other products, we typically see them considering two categories. One category is they're considering the traditional automation players. That's Zapier, Make.com, N8N. If they're more enterprisey, maybe Workato. And then there's the new AI agent builders. That's Lindy, Gumloop, Relevance. Those are the ones that we see most often. With respect to Zapier, our main differentiations have actually stayed pretty consistent since the beginning. It's a way easier product experience for non-technical users. AI is integrated much more natively and intuitively into the product, and we have human in the loop support, which I think is increasingly critical if you want AI to do things in your workflows. Now, for the AI agent builders, they typically have like pretty good AI primitives because they're AI first, but they don't typically have like the depth and robustness of integrations or the perfect usability. And so I think we're all we all have our strengths, we all have our flaws, but we're all kind of like circling around the same opportunity. So it's gonna be fun to see how the next year plays out. We have a lot of respect for all the companies I mentioned, by the way. I don't mean to belittle them in any way.
In terms of pricing, like there's a lot of this talk about um, pricing is going to change with AI, and it's going to be about outcomes. And I think in some ways, your category of products are always been a little bit of outcome based because the number of you're charging your free trial experts when
At
you
least
have
they've been
certain
usage
steps.
based. Our category has always
Yeah,
been usage based pretty much.
usage based.
And we could argue about whether usage based and outcome based are the same, but they're close enough. Like
Yeah.
they're pretty close. So yeah, there's no products in our category have ever charged really per seat. So a lot of the talk has been like, oh my gosh, is the per seat model going to go away? I don't know if it is or it isn't. But yeah, for us, it's natural to charge usage based. The interesting question there is like within usage based, do you think about it more as here's how much it costs us to deliver the service in terms of like our technical infrastructure and the underlying AI models you use, and then we take some margin on top of that, sort of like commodity pricing with margins, or do we say we are eliminating the need for you to hire a content marketer that you would have paid $5,000 a month for. So you should pay us 20% of what you would have paid that person and pay us $1,000 a month. And I think that would be more like, I think that's more like the outcome based pricing, like Finn is doing 99 cents per resolution. That's intercom support agent, 99% per resolution. They're not yet going to the point where they're saying like, pay us a third of what you pay your customer support person. But I think they are trying to draw the more direct line, which is like if Finn can resolve X many requests per hour, it should add up to some percentage of the cost of a person. Um, and for what it's worth, I really like living in this usage based pricing world because I feel like it aligns value to what people are paying really, really well. Like if you use the product more and it does more work for you, you should pay us more.
What you did a company before, and you're doing this is your second company, I'm assuming,
That's right.
and you sold that to Google, your first company. What didn't work in that company, and what are you trying to avoid doing the same things in this company?
Two big lessons from that company. The first is the one I mentioned before, which is that we let ourselves be a little bit seduced by top of funnel numbers when we really should have focused on having 10 super high value retained users. That was also in a different time. Um, and I'll talk about that in a second, where people thought differently about software business. Like that was when everyone wanted to build the next Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat. Like it was all about building consumer mobile apps where you get a bunch of users and then figure out how to monetize them later. So one big problem was like a product issue, I would say, where we built a good product, by the way, in the end, like very highly regarded. We did have many true fans, but I don't think we were as disciplined as we should have been about making sure it was really high retention and engagement at the beginning. And the second was we didn't understand business, or I didn't understand business. I was like, oh, we'll just build a mobile app like Instagram, and then eventually we'll get bought for $1 billion or monetize it with ads. And it turned out there was this other business model of like subscription B2B SaaS, which like totally existed in 2014 when we were working on this company. We just it wasn't our DNA, and we didn't think to do it. And so those are kind of the two things that um I wanted to think about in this company. One is like I wanted to make sure that it provided rock solid value, high engagement, and high retention to a small set of customers before we expanded too broadly. And then second, that from the very beginning, like the business model made some sense, and that meant like having even though we are a freemium product, it meant having a paid tier from the very beginning and making sure that like we could do some rough napkin math that people were going to pay us enough money based on our customer acquisition costs for the business to make sense.
So you are in that space where I think we are at the edge of, on one side, you might be called as automation, but if you just push towards that edge, you'll be called as agents. So you're probably close to the ground in terms of where the agent philosophy is going next. So what do you think, if you squint your eye, how are these going to look like in 2 years?
So here I think there are three principles that are going to be really important in agent building. I think they could take different forms, but there are three principles that are going to be really important. One, agents will need a robust and reliable mechanism to interact with all your tools. An agent can only work on your behalf if it can actually read data from your tools and update your tools. Whether that's based primarily on APIs or whether that's based based on a browser-based agent, I can't predict surely, but I think in the next 2 years, I think API-based approaches are likely to build more customer value. That's our approach for the near term. So that's number one. I think agents are still going to have to like figure out some way to talk to your tools. Second, this is something I think is really important. Agents will need to give you some sort of intermediate representation of what they plan to do before they do it, and give you some ability to give feedback before things happen. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And then the third is, as they're working, you need to have a great human in the loop mechanism to say like, hey, you didn't do this quite right. Go back, try it again, do this a little differently, do this better, or let me fix that for you and learn for next time. And so I think we will live in a world where, yes, you primarily use natural language to instruct your agent on what it wants to do or what you need it to do, what tools you need to give it access to, and what its mission is. Then there will be some sort of experience where you iterate on the plan of how it's going to do that, and then there'll be an experience where you work with it to get the final output. And some cases will be higher touch than other cases. In some cases, it'll just work. But I'll give you one other argument of why I think this intermediate representation of like a flowchart or a plan is so important. I was building a workflow last week that by the way, I use AI agent and AI workflow interchangeably. I know that there are technical differences between them, and I'll tell you why I don't care about the differences between them, but I use them interchangeably for now. So I was building an AI agent this week that we have this community challenge going right now. We have, a few hundred people in our community, and when they do stuff like answer a support question or make some content, they get some points, and then every week we have to tally up the leaderboard. So we have this pretty big spreadsheet where everyone's individual point entries are in, and then you need to do kind of like a group by and then a sum to tally it up. And I built, the first version of this, I basically just passed the CSV into all the AI models and I said, hey, tally up the scores per person. 4.0 Mini couldn't do it at all. 3.5 Sonnet did it pretty well, 95% accurate, but was fairly expensive. 01 could do it with 100% accuracy, but was very expensive. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is adding up numbers in a spreadsheet. Like, this doesn't require 01 level reasoning to do. Like, a first semester computer science student could write a little script to do this. And so what I ended up doing was, we also have a feature in our product where you can have custom code steps that run a little bit of JavaScript in the browser. And we have an experience by which you can generate that custom code with a prompt. So you write a prompt. It's like, hey, I've got this spreadsheet. It's a CSV. It has these columns. It has these rows, and I want to get this output. Write me a little script to do it. And when I switched to that methodology, the speed, accuracy, and cost were all dramatically better. Like, it was dominant on every axis. And that's kind of like a special caricatured example where like asking the AI to do runtime reasoning every time doesn't make any sense. Just ask it to write a function that it can run deterministically. But I think that applies to a lot more workflows. Where, like, let's say you have a workflow where you want to create a pre-meeting dossier for the person you're about to meet. Yes, you could make this technically fully agentic and say, your mission is to give me a meeting briefing for my meeting. The tools you have access to are looking at my past emails, looking at my past calendar events, looking at LinkedIn. Go. And then you reason on the fly every single time about how to do the tool calls and how to aggregate the data. But it's introducing a lot of unnecessary, from my perspective, computation and risk and reasoning. Whereas instead, you can like pre-compile and just say like, well, here's what I want to do. Look up all the past emails, look up all the past calendar events, go look up these LinkedIn profiles, and then use AI as a workflow step to combine this into a final briefing. And the first one is technically an AI agent, and the second one is technically an AI workflow because it's not doing like runtime agentic reasoning and tool calling. But from a practical perspective, it's doing the same use case. It's sort of a blurry line between the two. And I think not only is this like pre-compiled version of the flowchart way more understandable to users, it's going to run way more reliably and way faster in practice. That's kind of our philosophy right now, which is like, AI is amazing. Reasoning is amazing. Like, use it for the right tools. Like, use it for the right jobs, not for every job.
Um, One more final question. We're almost at the end of our conversation. Is what's next in terms of like scaling? Are you like planning to do a fundraise and scale, or are you, growing enough that you use your revenue to scale? How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, we don't feel any need to fundraise at the moment. We have plenty of runway, and our revenue is growing quite quickly. Um, you can never predict for sure, but it looks like we'd be able to make it to profitability if we had to. If venture capital did not exist as a construct, I'm confident this business would still be successful. um, that said, I think we will likely want to raise additional capital because it's such a big opportunity and it's moving so fast, and we'll want to take advantage of that. That said, like, my philosophy on company building has really changed since my first company. Like, it used to be like, you raise your seed round, you hire 10 people. You raise your Series A, you go to 30 people. You raise your Series B, you go to 100 people. You raise your Series C, you go to 300 people. And there was just like this expectation that was like, yep, you raise a new round of funding, you triple the company. And for the kind of business that we're building, like, we have 9 people right now. Yeah, I can see us needing 12 or 15 or maybe 20, but like, I don't right now see a near term future where we need 200. And so I think, modern company building is going to look very different. We may still decide to raise venture capital. We probably will, but we won't need to immediately, triple the team size to take advantage of the opportunity that we're pursuing.
I mean, Mid-Journey had like 10 people and they scaled to like what, 100 million, I don't know, some
Yeah,
crazy
exactly.
revenue, right?
And of course, if you're a sales-led company and you need salespeople and implementation and account managers and customer success, like, then you need bodies. If you're DoorDash, you need drivers. Then you need bodies. But like, if you're building a bottom-up PLG self-serve business with primarily word of mouth and community-generated content, like, I think we can get like Midjourney. Like, I think we can get pretty far with a pretty lean team.
I think as we are like, as technology evolves, we get more leverage per individual.
Yeah.
That means the amount of revenue you can generate as a startup per team actually increases. So like the smallest, the team size reduces and the revenue increases. Like
This is
that
what
is
I
sort of
think
like
is
the trend.
Yeah, this is what I think is so cool, where it's like, here's how I think company evolution is going to change. Like, at the end of my time at Google, I was responsible for a very large organization, and my entire job was political navigation and bureaucracy. I don't know that those jobs are going to exist to the same degree anymore. I've also had roles where my job was to like take a brief and write a very specific thing. I don't think those roles are going to exist anymore either. I think everyone is going to be sort of a player coach kind of role, where you need to be strategic enough and autonomous enough that you can understand what needs to be done. You need to be close enough to the work that you can either do a reference implementation yourself or give really detailed guidance, but then you'll have, leverage via AI agents to do everything else you need to. And I'm super excited about that because I think that's the work that I enjoy most. And I think it's the work that a lot of people enjoy most. Like, I don't really meet people who are like, I love the political bureaucracy. Like, that's what really excites me about my day job. And I also don't meet people who are like, I love copy editing every single word in my blog post. Like, I don't meet many people who say they love either of those kinds of work. I meet a lot of people who say like, I love figuring out what to do. I love solving the hard technical problem. And so like, I don't know, I'm excited. If that's what we all get to do all the time, work's going to be awesome.
If you're really into writing a blog, trying to get a blog output in a big company, that will kill your blog writing or appetite.
Yeah, I actually made a LinkedIn post about this week because I had this idea that was like, oh, I should do like a live build with me session. Like, I've recorded a lot of 5-10 minute tutorial videos, but like, oh, let's just do like a 40-minute session where like I don't script it. We just work together on it. And I wrote this LinkedIn post that was like, here's what it would look like at Google if I had this idea of a build with me webinar. First, write the idea in an email to product marketing. Spend 2 weeks trying to set up a meeting with product marketing. Then come up with the OKRs and the goals of this new format and write a proposal for it and put it into next quarter's OKRs. Then get approval from 10 stakeholders. Then get approval to email the right customers. Then figure out which product marketing counterpart who's actually going to be with it on the ground because you need to have them looped in. Then have them create the slides. And like, if you haven't given up already, maybe 9 months later, you actually get to do the webinar. Whereas at a startup, I was like, I had this idea Tuesday night at like 10 p.m., like after my kids fell asleep, and I was like, oh, let me just like email our list and like see who'd want to do this. 100 people signed up right away. I scheduled the event for like the next morning, 10 a.m., and we just did it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you the question about like working in Google and startup, but I think
Mhm.
you pre-answered my question already. But I think, yeah, this was an amazing chat. I want to, not go over time and give back your time. But I think you can count me as one of those 1,000 fans. I think you are pretty
Awesome.
close to product market fit. And thanks for coming on the show and sharing all your insights and experience.
Thanks so much. It was a blast.